Good afternoon, everyone. In today's video, we shall be looking at communication, where we'll be providing the meaning of communication in a very basic form. Many times, people do not understand expressly what communication is entirely about. It is not just by talking or by doing things believing that that has been communicated effectively. For example, one of the illusions people normally have is a communication has taken place, whereas that hasn't been decoded by the recipient or the receiver. Now, as many school of thoughts had it, that communication is a key uh, to success. Other scholars also acknowledge that it's a language of leadership. For a communication to be effective, it has to be encoded and decoded. So it goes through a channel. Now, what is communication? Communication is a two-way process of sending an idea, thoughts, or feelings to someone else in order to get a mutual understanding. That is, you send an information to someone, or your thoughts about something to someone, or how you feel about something to someone, so that that person will receive it, understand it, and be able to respond by way of feedback in order to come to an agreement. That is communication. And there are many barriers that could hamper a lot of communication. Quite a number of times, people do not communicate effectively because of different factors or barriers around them, or with the illusion that the communication has taken place. Now, we're going to be talking about that in the next video, looking at some other forms of communications, like what we refer to as several C's of communication. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to look at very briefly some types of communication, which we are used to. These are called common communication processes, such as verbal communication. You talk, that is, you're sending a message by talking, and the person, the recipient or the participant receives it, they encode it, and then you get a feedback in return. So those are channels. It goes through a channel of encoding by sending, by the sender, and then to the receiver through a channel of communication. That process of sending and being received is the channel of communication, and being decoded is the other part of showing evidence of a communication that has been taking place. So verbal communication is a way of talking. Then non-verbal communication is another form of communication where you do not necessarily have to speak, but you speak by body language, gestures, eye contact, etc. And then we also have written communication, where you have to write things down in order to express your feelings, your thoughts, and your ideas, and then obviously expecting to get a feedback on that. And we also have some other form of communication through email communications, social networking communications, where you send information, and all different kinds of communication methods. All of these are all communication methods where you communicate, sending an information, idea, or thoughts to another person who receives that, decode it, and then get a feedback. So communications are very important in our day-to-day activities. And that's why some of the scholars who acknowledged that communication is key to success is very, very true. So when you communicate effectively, that's when communication can be said to be fully established and decoded, because you come to a mutual agreement or understanding. So there are barriers to communication, What are these barriers to communications? If your communication is unclear, if you're communicating in an environment that is not conducive, maybe through noisy environment, for example, people tend to be in some sort of environment they're communicating, and then that communication could be impacted, not completely decoded by the recipient or the receiver of that communication. Or it could be network issues. When you're communicating without a proper network service or network problems, if there's a network problem, that could impact on your communication process. So remember, communication is in two-way. It's a two-way process where the sender sends this information and then the receiver receives this information and then be able to decode and then come to an agreement. For the purpose of this short video, in our next video, we shall be looking more into further types of communication, such as the 7 C's of communication. In other words, what communication entails. For example, be concise, be correct, etc. So we're going to be talking about all of that in our next video for a better understanding of how and why communication is truly a key language of leadership and success. I hope this is informative and you have enjoyed this session. Thank you.